Hello, JBS viewers. Welcome back to the ISGAP Hour. I'm David Harris, and as always, I'm joined by the visionary founder and CEO of ISGAP, ISGAP being the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy, Dr. Charles Small. And with us today in the studio here in New York is the Washington Coordinator and Research Fellow for ISGAP, someone many of you know from previous appearances, Dalia Ziada. Dalia Ziada is, in my estimation, one of the best analysts of what's going on in the Middle East and in the larger Muslim world. Dalia, welcome back to the ISGAP Hour.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you, Charles, for having me with you.
We're honored that you're here.
Thank you.
But I have a very important announcement before we get to our conversation, and this is for the ISGAP viewers. You should know that David Harris just published a very important book called Antisemitism, All You Need to Know, by Oxford University Press, the illustrious Oxford University Press. It was released just a few days ago, and it's already climbing the charts. And it's really a concise understanding of contemporary anti-Semitism. It's not a heavy academic book, and it's really, I recommend to all our listeners that you pick it up. You can order it on Amazon. And it's a concise overview of all that you really need to know about the issues confronting our community today.
Well, thank you. And that was totally unscripted. What is scripted is the conversation we're going to have with you, Dalia. So we wanted to get into a lot of topics, but we have to ask you, because it's just a few days since the dramatic events in the region, President Trump's visit, first to Israel, then to Egypt, the ceasefire. As things stand today, which is October the 16th as we record, is Dalia Ziada optimistic, cautiously optimistic, pessimistic? Where are you on the spectrum of emotions and feelings?
Oh, thank you, David and Charles, of course, and congratulations on your new book. I cannot wait to read it. I would say I'm Middle East optimistic, which actually means that given the situation in the Middle East, what has happened in the past few weeks is a huge achievement. We were living a nightmare for 2 years. We don't know where the hostages were, whether they are alive or dead, whether they are tortured or they are even if this idea of having so many killed under the tunnels in this darkness and being unable to find them, until today, Hamas cannot even find all the bodies that were killed.
Or so they tell us.
Or so they tell us, exactly. So they keep the card in their hand and continue playing their dirty game. So given the situation in the Middle East, I would say yes, things are moving forward. Finally, President Trump put his heavy weight on the region to move the needle, and it's not something common in the Middle East. So given that it is a Middle East, yes, it's a good step, but we have to be very careful about the other actors who are involved. At the same time, President Trump has made a wonderful progress by, bringing leaders from the leaders who have leverage over Hamas, like Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey, to do something. At the same time, he alienated the important ones like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and they feel like they are left behind on this, and this is not good. This is not going to lead to the moderate region that we want. It will only further empower Qatar, further empower Turkey to do their usual damage to our region.
So a question. So I remember a few weeks ago, after the Israelis attacked Hamas in Qatar, in Doha, you were very concerned. The rhetoric coming out of Egypt was very strong, very anti-Israel in a way that we've never seen in maybe since the peace accord. And I know you were very concerned. Did the attack in Qatar by the Israelis sort of push this initiative forward? Because suddenly there was a lot of activity, and we have Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt is getting a lot of funding from Qatar, being the signers of this agreement. And these are the people that have been sort of supportive of the Muslim Brotherhood outside of Egypt and Hamas. So is this Did the attack put pressure on these entities, on Qatar and Turkey, to make a peace? What transpired in a very short period of time, in your view?
I mean, this attack definitely contributed to it because it showed, but not the attack itself, but the idea that Israel is now growing bigger than the Arab world wants it to be. They always put a limit to where Israel can grow, so it doesn't represent a threat to them, including the good ones and the bad ones, by the way. I mean, speaking about Saudi Arabia, even Egypt, I consider is one of the good ones so far. But of course, this triggered a lot of hostility toward Israel, as you just mentioned. Egypt, for the first time, calls Israel an enemy in a public speech. Even Qatar, in this context, which was attacked by Israel, did not call Israel an enemy, but Egypt did. The Egyptian president did. So this was shocking, and I think this is what triggered the U.S. administration to do something about it before it's too late. Right. Especially that there is a commitment by President Trump toward this Qatar to protect its security, based on their economic partnership. I mean, so he had to do something, and we ended up with pushing this huge push that happened for peace. But why it succeeded? It couldn't have succeeded, by the way. Why it succeeded? Because there is a state of fatigue in the region. Everyone is tired. In the region, and I would say in the world as well. In parallel with that, European nations tried to make European states, I would say, tried to make a scene at the UN by recognizing a Palestinian state that does not even exist.
Canada and Australia.
and Canada and the Australians, that's right. So they tried to make a scene which made the US looks bad. So President Trump, I believe, he had to do something in order to show that he is the boss here. You know, he's the one who has the final word and who can really make a difference in the region.
And briefly, do you think the fact that that Qatar and Turkey were signers to this agreement, you were saying it sort of leaves the Saudis and others behind, but does it put them, are they now responsible for an agreement? Is Turkey and Qatar, if the ceasefire doesn't work, or if Hamas does not disarm, is Qatar and Turkey responsible? Will the Americans be critical of their allies?
Ironically, nobody is responsible in this agreement. It's just a framework for what the U.S., it's a framework for the U.S. vision for the region that these countries signed up for or agree with. Actually, it's also, if you remember the scene when President Trump was in Sharm el-Sheikh speaking to the audience, and from behind him, it's a Middle East beast, but actually there are no Middle East people even behind him. And it was really interesting to see that, because at the end of the day, it seems that it is a statement to the world more than it is a real solution to the Middle East. It needs a lot of work. Also, it's absolutely wrong to have any confidence in Turkey and Qatar. They are top manipulators. Actually, we know from our own research at ISGAP very well how they are playing behind the scenes in order to push things in the wrong direction to serve their own interests, which are evil interests that supports extremism and radicalism on the expense of modernizing the region, or even having a peaceful Middle East. So they are working against the vision of the US already. And nothing proves this more than the fact that when President Trump wanted to bring Prime Minister Netanyahu with him to Egypt, all of them said no. And I think the only one who just accepted it was the Egyptian president, but everyone else in the room said, no, we don't want Netanyahu here. So I don't think they can be trusted with this, actually.
In fact, I think to that point, President Erdogan said that he would turn the plane around and return to Ankara if Prime Minister Netanyahu showed up in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Yes.
But let me ask you a couple of questions following what you just said, Dalia. Number one, shouldn't a proof of commitment for Qatar in particular be that it become the next country to join the Abraham Accords? In other words, why should they be allowed to broker and negotiate and get all the credit that President Trump showered on them, and it was very effusive, without him turning around and say, okay, now, my friends, it's your turn. We all look at Saudi Arabia, we look at Indonesia, but what about you? What about you? Is that ridiculously naive? Or from the vantage point of the United States, should that be non-negotiable?
Actually, for the ideological part of Qatar, I think Charles can speak better about this than me, but I will just hint on it, is the idea that actually it's hard to expect that Qatar at any moment would align with the Abrahamic Accords or would want to have any type of normalization with Israel, because Qatar and Turkey, because it means they will lose their base in the Muslim and Arab world, which is giving them strength on the domestic level and giving a country as small and as actually useless as Qatar. Honestly, it is. Think about Qatar outside its Islamist influence. It's useless. So it's the only thing that gives it leverage in the tribal competition with other Gulf countries is the fact that it has direct connections with radical Islamism in the region.
But Dalia, let me interrupt you. If you were sitting with Donald Trump in the Oval Office today, and he asked you for your thoughts, would you say you like to arm wrestle? You like to arm wrestle with the President of France. Why not arm wrestle with Qatar and say, you want all these American gifts, including now an Air Force facility in Idaho? The minimum we expect. And by the way, Qatar, I'm old enough to remember, I'm putting words in Donald Trump's mouth, that in the early 1990s, Qatar and Oman were the first two Arab nations after Egypt not to have full relations, but to have trade offices, which you could read as diplomatic representation between Israel and Qatar, Israel and Oman. So from your point of view, forget what Qatar thinks. What would you tell the American president?
First of all, I would applaud him for being so smart and so great in understanding the language spoken in the region. And by the language, I would not say the Arabic language, I mean the language of the leaders of the region, exactly, that they are, they want to feel that they are the key players. Each of them wants to feel that he is the key player in the region, and the President of the United States will not make decisions in the region without going to speak with them. So President Trump, I believe, when he and his team, when they were designing this peace agreement, they looked for who are the players who can really move the needle, who can do something about the current situation. And it was very easy for them, I guess, to identify Qatar as the key player because of its leverage and relationship with Hamas. And then comes after that Turkey and Egypt. So they contacted them and they worked with them on making sure that they will get Hamas to agree on what the US wants to achieve, or this vision, or at least the first step of delivering the hostages or releasing the hostages and stopping the war from the Israeli side. So yes, we moved this, but to trust Qatar beyond this point is a huge mistake for many reasons. First, it's leaning on Qatar and Egypt and Turkey. I mean, the axis of evil in the region makes the axis of good lose its trust and confidence in the United States and in President Trump personally, because they have personal relationship with him. And second,
but where are you putting Egypt now? The axis of good or the axis of evil?
Egypt,
just to be clear.
No, Egypt over the past 2 years turned to the axis of evil. Unfortunately, it was bought by Qatar. And I'm ashamed as an Egyptian to say that Qatar bought Egypt. Qatar bribed the Egyptian leadership. They bailed them out of many of several episodes of the chronic economic crisis we had. So Egypt is simply paying back, and we saw this by aligning with Iran, aligning with Qatar, aligning with Turkey. This is the camp that Egypt is working with right now. So this is, unfortunately, Egypt now is in the evil camp, in the axis of evil camp, and this is not good for anyone. The only thing I just want to add to the idea you said, David, about you remember that Qatar was one of the first Arab countries or Arab tribes, to have relations with Israel. Yes, this was before the Muslim Brotherhood started to get into Qatar, and the royal families there started to
that's our next topic.
Yeah, started to lean to the Muslim Brotherhood side, which demonizes Israel and actually builds its own narrative and rhetoric around the idea of hating Israel.
So a quick question. I think the Saudis, and I think perhaps people in the United States, believe that if you hold Qatar close, if you're close to Qatar, there's a possibility that the royal family will stop their spiritual oath, their bayat to the Muslim Brotherhood. Do you think that's possible? That there can be a break between the
answer is written on Dalia's face.
Yeah, exactly. As you know, Charles, very well. I mean, and we did a lot of research on this. As you know, they are beyond this point right now.
So why are the Saudis doing this? Do you think there's a rapprochement with Qatar?
Saudis want to make sure that Saudi, after the Arab Spring, became the most important player in the region. The Egyptians get offended when people say this, but we can call it the mother of the Arab world today. And for at least the past decade or decade and a half, and thus it wants to continue to play this role. I am the mother of all, so I will speak to everyone. Qatar, the relationship between Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and not only Qatar, I mean all the other Gulf countries, is kinship relationships. So they are cousins, brothers, and all of the Arabian Peninsula are cousins and brothers actually before they turn into tribes, and from tribes into states. So the relationship will always exist, but it will exist with this tribal competition or tribal logic that they wouldn't mind killing each other at one point and then hugging and kissing each other at the other point. So this is, unfortunately, this is how they are thinking in this part of the world. And Saudi wants to keep this leadership role, and it cannot do with canceling one country or another. It has to work with everyone.
And do you think bin Salman didn't come to the conference in Egypt because of the fraught relations because Qatar and Egypt became closer? You think this?
Because the U.S. and Qatar became closer. They are actually, the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia are very offended with the fact that President Trump is taking the side of Qatar now. And he's giving Qatar advantages that he didn't give to them. He didn't give to the United Arab Emirates, which normalized relations with Israel, for example. He didn't give to Saudi Arabia, which is now the most important Arab country, the leader of the Arab world today. So he's giving the military base, for example, he's giving it to Qatar, not to them. And if you remember, in the first term of President Trump, he actually the first meeting he did with the Arabs in 2017 came from this meeting, the decision to boycott Qatar. So now actually it's Qatar seems to be winning in their eyes.
So why?
It has to do with economy. I mean, with the economic relationships that, Qatar unfortunately understood that President Trump liked to make business deals, and they offered him some interesting business deals, and he liked that, and he's playing along.
But Saudi Arabia and the UAE also have the capacity to offer
They did.
beautiful business deals.
They did, but they are asking for big things in return. So I believe that's why it's easier to play with Qatar on this level. So it's really confusing, but I'm sure there is.
And do you think that this situation, this vacuum, will this bring Israel closer to Saudi Arabia, or it's going to make it more difficult to normalize relations?
Actually, this is a very good question, Charles. I think it will bring United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia much closer to Israel, because they want to balance the Qatar growth that we are seeing now or Qatar ascendance as a player now in the region, while it shouldn't. So I think, yes, they will try to balance this by getting closer to Israel, and we started to see this. Usually, I mean, if you want to understand where Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates is heading, look at their influencers on social media. And all of them now are, once again, speaking about the Abraham Accords, the importance of the Abraham Accords, the potential of Saudi Arabia joining next. And so they are paving the way for this to happen. So I think it will definitely bring Israel closer to the moderate axis, or the axis of good in the region.
Dalia, as we mentioned earlier, let's turn to the Muslim Brotherhood specifically, because the Muslim Brotherhood is the top priority for ISGAP. It's a top priority for your research and for our policy initiatives in Washington and elsewhere.
Yeah.
First, let's begin at the beginning for JBS viewers who are tuning in for the first time. What is the Muslim Brotherhood? Why should it matter to ISGAP or to American officials or European officials? And in particular, what is its approach and attitude towards Jews and towards Israel?
That's a great question. Thank you, David. But before we do that, would you mind, Charles, if you don't mind, David, that we tell the audience something about the big work we're doing in
Please.
Washington?
I want you to.
Please.
Yeah. So for JBS viewers, we're honored to appoint Dalia as the coordinator for Washington.
Thank you.
So
My honor.
So ISGAP is, we have a presence in Washington, and we're trying to institutionalize it and develop it. And Dalia will be heading our operations in DC.
Yeah, and the Muslim Brotherhood project.
Yes, the project. Please.
Would you like to mention what we're about to do?
No,
I want you to do it, but I want you to do it in the context of explaining to our viewers.
Yeah.
What is the
Muslim Brotherhood? Why should they care?
Right. Actually, we are about to start. We have already started a campaign to educate policymakers.
Why?
Okay. Okay.
Why?
Okay.
Why should every viewer of JBS need to know this and understand the centrality of this issue to the work of ISGAP and why ISGAP therefore matters today? Why?
So the Muslim Brotherhood has always been a threat to the West, to the Western values and traditions. And they have been on a mission that started more than 40 years ago to destroy the Western civilization from within. And I'm using their words, by the way, the words that were written in their projects and their drafts, their manifesto about what they want to achieve in the West. For a while, just for a very short while, after the Arab countries started to push the Muslim Brotherhood out of the Middle East region and started to designate them as terrorist organizations, the West opened its eyes that, okay, why don't we do the same? Especially that we know, and there are legal claims, not even claims, legal trials that proved that the Muslim Brotherhood in the West were involved in funding terrorist organizations in the Middle East and everywhere, like Hamas and others. So why don't we take an action against them? And we started to see a rise in the number of countries actually that started to make investigations on the nature of the Muslim Brotherhood. A lot of research that was done maybe between 2015 up to 2017, 2018, and then all of a sudden it stopped. And everyone forgot how dangerous the Muslim Brotherhood is. And
do we know why it stopped?
I think it has very much to do with the rise of the radical left, which the Muslim Brotherhood used, the rise of the radical left in the West, which the Muslim Brotherhood used as a gate to come back to the American society, and giving them some legitimacy as freedom fighters or people who just practicing free expression and so like parasites. They jumped on this radical left movement and they really took advantage of their position.
And just for the JBS viewers, I think it's important to note that the Muslim Brotherhood started in Egypt about 100 years ago, and it fuses, I would argue, a perversion of the great religion of Islam with European genocidal anti-Semitism. It takes the protocols of the Elders of Zion. These are the words and ideas that led to the Holocaust. Professor Ali Wiesel always taught us that the Holocaust did not begin with the crematoriums and the railroad tracks. It began with words and ideas. Exactly. And these words and ideas led to the Holocaust. These words and ideas of the protocols is the core element of the ideology, of the philosophy of the Brotherhood. They take the perversion of Islam and fuse it with this horrific hatred, and then sort of unleash their ideology around the world of trying to destroy democracy, to get the West out of the Middle East, and to murder Jews.
Exactly.
Yosef Kaudawi, the spiritual head of the Brotherhood, always preached that the true believer, the true Muslim, is obligated to finish the work of Hitler. So this is the ideology. And one of the things that's very important is I find people in the West, scholars, intellectuals, policymakers, the Jewish community, we have no idea who the Muslim Brotherhood is. We don't know their philosophers, their worldview. The Muslim Brotherhood has mastered Western, European, and American thought and politics and culture.
And language.
And language and institutions. And we know nothing about them, but they've mastered us. And this is very important. I think the work that you're doing and the work at ISGAP is we're trying to shed light on the ideology of the Brotherhood and how they're using their strategic goals not only to destroy Israel and murder Jews, but to destroy the United States. I know this sounds like a fantastical project, but as you know, they're making advances right under our noses and we're oblivious to it.
Dalia, talk to us about those advances.
Exactly.
Because there were JBS viewers who were saying, well, come on, Charles. You think that some group somewhere in the Middle East can really destroy Israel, bring down the West? Impossible. Talk to us about the inroads here in the United States, for starters, and then in your native Canada.
Exactly. It's actually, the Muslim Brotherhood are very clever in hiding their true intentions, and they are very clever also in making other groups do the dirty work on behalf of them, while they are the masters behind the scene who are managing all of this. And they, as Charlie just mentioned very clearly, that it's difficult to hold them. It's difficult to point at them and say, from here to here is the Muslim Brotherhood. This is the leadership. This is the factions.
There's no central headquarters. Is there a central headquarters?
Or even monolithic
Is there an address?
organization.
Is there an address in the Middle East where you can say, this is the global headquarters of the Muslim Brotherhood?
In the Middle East, yes. It has been the case until they were banned in several countries. In Egypt, actually, they had a headquarter.
But today?
But in the West, they didn't play it this way. They played in the West with the rules of the West. And this is the most dangerous
So they
part.
use the rules of the West against the West.
They used democracy
Freedom of expression.
to destroy democracy. They used democracy to destroy democracy, actually.
And apropos of this, this is a very big problem in France, in the United Kingdom, in Canada. But for JBS viewers, apropos of what you're saying, Mr. Mamdani, who there's a good chance he'll be the mayor of this great city of New York, the most important city in this country, the largest important country, most important Jewish community in the diasporas here. Mr. Mamdani established SJP at Bowdoin College.
Students for Justice in Palestine.
SJP comes out of American Muslims for Palestine, AMP, which the Trump administration now is investigating. They just announced it recently that they're investigating and may register them as a terror organization. You'll notice that Mr. Mamdani will never condemn Hamas because Hamas is the Palestinian chapter of the Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas is the Palestinian chapter of the Muslim Brotherhood, SJP. 400 chapters at top universities across this country comes out of the Muslim Brotherhood. American Jews need to understand how this is taking place right here in our communities, on our streets, in our institutions.
In front of us and under our noses.
This is actually what you said, David, about what happened, like why we are remembering the Muslim Brotherhood now. What happened in the past 2 years? The rise of groups like Students for Justice in Palestine, their open use of, or their open practice of anti-Semitism in broad daylight, the violence they
But
used.
wait, they claim they're only anti-Israel or anti-Zionist.
Oh yeah, it's the same old game that Al-Qaradawi and his people. Al-Qaradawi is one of the main ideologues of the Muslim Brotherhood, and his and
you referenced him a moment ago, Charles.
yeah, he was based in Doha, and his followers, and so has been using for decades to
Expelled
brainwash.
from Egypt and moved to Qatar.
Exactly. This idea, you know, Al-Qaradawi actually in one of his teachings, most of his writings were directed to Muslims abroad, to the Muslim Brotherhood living in Western countries. And he said very clearly, there is no one thing that unites all Muslims together, except causes. And chief among them is the Palestinian cause. Is Palestine, as he said, the Palestinian cause, which, by the way, we don't have a clear definition for what the Palestinian cause is. In the West, people think the Palestinian cause is about building a Palestinian state, which is amazing, okay, nice, but this is not the truth. It's about destroying the Israeli state.
And if it's not clear in recent days, especially, that the so-called ceasefire that they were all clamoring for, which has now arrived, is not enough for them.
Absolutely. There is no ceasefire with jihad. Actually, not in the Islamic terminology or Arabic terminology, there is a word equivalent to ceasefire. To translate the word ceasefire to Arabic, you need 3 words phrase. Waqf itlaq an-nar. It's a 3 words phrase. It's not one word. The only known word in this culture is hudna. And hudna is truce. It's temporary pause. Truce, yeah. It's temporary pause of fighting so we can rearm, regroup, and come back and kill you. It's basically, this is how they are thinking about it. So back to the West, the things that for the first time in the past 2 years, the Muslim Brotherhood in the West show us the real face, building on the momentum of October 7 and the Gaza war. And they wanted to use this to shift the rhetoric in the West, in cooperation with the radical left, of course, to shift the rhetoric in the West against the Jewish people in particular. And if you notice, the target was not only the Israeli people. Their target was also American Jews. And why they are doing this, this point is very, very important. Why they are targeting the Jews in particular, we have to understand this. They are targeting the Jews in the West because it is the only community in the West that's still coherent and still holding the West intact. Their goal, their end goal, the Muslim Brotherhood end goal is to destroy the West from within, as mentioned in their documents. To achieve that, it's easier to infiltrate into other groups like Christian groups or so, or in general, the West today, we can call it post-God. It's not as religious, as intact. There is no one culture that defines it anymore. So to do that, to destroy the West, they need to destroy the only one pillar that is left, that is holding the West together, which is the Jewish people in the West. That even those who are not religious among them, they are still close to their culture, they are still close to each other, they focus on the collective more than the individual. So once they destroy the Jewish communities in the West, they can definitely destroy the West as a whole. So that's why they used this momentum, just followed the teachings of people like Al-Qaradawi and his disciple, I would say, Ali al-Salabi, who is now leading the spirituality of the group right now and making fatwas, and so also from Doha. So yeah, they are just following the teachings of the group.
So back to the meeting with President Trump that we created for you, for Dalia Ziada. Would you say to President Trump, Mr. President, it's time to ban the Muslim Brotherhood here in the United States or not?
We are going to say this literally actually next month.
We being ISGAP.
ISGAP, yes. Our team, we've been working on on a huge project, if I may mention it, Charles, or
Please.
if you would you like
Please,
to
yeah,
mention?
go ahead.
It's a huge project we've been working on for a year now in order to expose who the Muslim Brotherhood in the West really are. And it's actually speaking for the ideology, the tactics the group is using to destroy the West from within, how far they have gone since they wrote these tactics on paper, this plan on paper 40 years ago, how far they have gone, how much they have achieved. And we are relating all of this to what happened in the past 2 years. And we will use this actually as a tool to educate policymakers in Washington, starting from legislators at the Congress and the Senate up to people in the White House and State Department, of course, which is institutions that should do the designation of the Muslim Brotherhood. We know that they know that the Muslim Brotherhood is a big threat. We saw Secretary Rubio in more than one occasion mentions that they really want to take an action on designating the group, but they still cannot identify it as a one whole. So we are just helping them with this identification. We are linking the dots for them, kind of. And we will provide them with this, and I hope good things will come out of it. Actually, the first conference we made on the issue in the Congress a few months ago received a lot of applause, and it at least opened the topic once again after it was totally forgotten. So I'm glad we're taking big steps already, and I'm sure it will make a difference.
Yeah, and I will say that Dalia's participation in this project and Haris Rafiq,
Yeah.
The two of you have played an instrumental role, and I think this may be one of our better reports we ever produced, and
Wow.
our most important report in many ways. And as Dalia was saying, the ISGAP team embarked on a project to try to ban the Muslim Brotherhood. Everybody said it's impossible. There's First Amendment, political freedom here, but we're showing that the Brotherhood in the United States is undermining and out to destroy American democracy, and we're beginning to have traction. Everybody said it was impossible. We have support on both sides of the aisle since our May event in Rayburn Building in Washington, and I hope this event with this amazing report and the team we're assembling for a one-day symposium will get more traction in Washington to ban the Brotherhood, and I think there's indications that people are taking this seriously.
And also, Charles, we are actually looking at it as a global mission. It's not only a U.S. mission. I mean, you're from Canada, I'm from Egypt, David is from the United States, Haris is from the UK. So we are a global team coming together in order to rid our world of this evil that's called the Muslim Brotherhood.
The irony, of course, is that in many of our allies, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Jordan, Bahrain, the Muslim Brotherhood is banned.
Yes.
But in the West, as far as I know, only Austria has tried and faced many legal challenges, and I think more recently Kenya.
Yeah, Kenya banned it recently,
In
about
Africa,
a month ago.
it may have been among the first African countries to ban it. So, Charles, I know you're spending a lot of time on behalf of ISGAP in Washington and with legislators. Do you have a sense of hope or optimism that this time it might be different?
I'm hopeful. As I was saying, when we embarked on this project of banning the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States, everybody thought it was ridiculous to even try. But I think today, I'm filled with hope. After our event in May, we got traction and support on both sides of the aisle from Democrats and Republicans. And I think this administration is beginning to take this seriously. And so, I'm cautiously optimistic.
And are you concerned that Qatar and Turkey, which were mentioned by Dalia several times as being on the opposite side of this issue, how much influence will they leverage in Washington to try and stop this effort?
So we know that Qatar is really, putting a lot of effort in Washington. They fired,
and money.
Fired a lot of PR firms and law firms to attack anybody that's critical of the Muslim Brotherhood. So they're very active in many spheres in our society, from universities to political influence. But I think that there's good people from the Middle East that understand, they were at the front line for many decades in confronting the Brotherhood. They understand the devastating negative impact that the Brotherhood has on society, has on Middle Eastern society and Muslim communities in Europe and North America. So I think we have some good friends.
I also want to add to this is that our strength actually comes from the fact that we are an academic institution. We work with facts. We are not here to oppose any country or do politics with any country. We are just stating facts based on rigorous research. It's not, we are not really, I mean, if you see how many phases of editing our research goes through, you will understand that it's 100% facts. So this is where our strength comes from. It's not political, it's educational, it's helping policymakers see, and we are not just making enemies of anyone, you know, it's...
which speaks to many of the strengths of ISGAP, but we know that people like Ilhan Omar in the Congress, groups like the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, Students for Justice in Palestine, and some of their far left allies are going to shout racism, Islamophobia, to shut this down. Now, it's obvious that you come from the Muslim world and you're an observant Muslim.
My partner on the research as well, Haris Rafiq, is also a Muslim from the UK. So I want to know how you, as a proud observant Muslim, of course,
will respond to those accusations of racism against Muslims and Islamophobia. What's your response?
Islamophobia has always been the mob they used against anyone who dares to speak against them. It's the cover they are using to pretend that they are just Muslims being victim. You know, this game of being a victim to the bad Westerners who doesn't understand Islam and so. But the truth is, it's the opposite of that. Western people are very friendly to good Muslims. On the contrary, they are actually, I mean, at least from my experience here in the United States, they are craving to find the good Muslims because for so long, these radical groups were on the forefront, introducing themselves and deceiving everyone by introducing themselves as if they are the moderate Muslims, but they are not. They were just promoting the agenda of the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, whitewashing groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS and all of these. So I think opposite to that, I'm as one example, Haris also as another example, my partner in the research. We are Muslims, we are devout Muslims, we practice Islam, I mean, we are observers of Islam, and we are proud of our religion as well. I mean, actually we discuss this all the time, like, you know, me and him. So it's not about Islam, it's about the fact that there is an evil group that is abusing my religion in order to promote its political agenda. And it's our duty to stop them. It's our duty to prevent them from abusing this religion in order to promote their agenda. So, or to advance their agenda, which is an evil one. So definitely I believe, I actually also I see it as the forces of God versus the forces of evil. They are the forces of evil, regardless what the religion is. And I believe, and I'm not saying this, I mean, in any broad way, or, you know, we are the forces of good. We are definitely the forces of good. The fact that, actually, think about it, we are sitting together in this room, two Jewish people, one, you know, Canadian, British, American, one Egyptian, and we are speaking about the future of our world. Of the good world we want to see happening next. So this is good. They don't want to see that. That's why you will find people like the names you mentioned earlier, and even groups like civil rights group or civil society groups come and use this Islamophobia accusations. And so again, it's the people who do that in order to discredit them, to make their voice not heard or not accepted by the society they speak to.
And I would add, Dalia, that there are some Jewish groups that should be active in this effort as well, that I hope are listening to you, because too many of them have been silent fearful that they will somehow interrupt interfaith relations when they need to hear from Dalia Ziada and people like you that you spoke about our world, our civilization is on the line here. That's setting the threshold.
Yeah. I'll tell you something that may change their perception. These Jewish people who are afraid to speak up, I believe they identify Islam, or they see Islamophobia equivalent to anti-Semitism, but the difference is huge. Anti-Semitism is hate of the Jewish people for just being Jewish people. It's a hate for this entire race that's called the Jewish people and this entire religion that's called Judaism. Islamophobia is different. Islamophobia does exist, but it's not hate towards the Muslim people at large. It's hate towards the behaviors of the Muslims in the West. Huge difference. They hate the fact that they can stand in the middle of the street and pray and stop life. Of course, they have to hate that. They hate the fact that they practice terrorism. They stab people randomly. They kill people and they find killing acceptable. Of course, they have to hate this. This is not Islamophobia. This is not, I mean,
So
this is...
such an important point you're making, Charles, reference has been made several times to Canada. You're from Canada. Talk to us about the Muslim Brotherhood in Canada and what's happened there, because in a way it's another relevant case study.
Yeah, so I think it's it's a good case study, and I think it's endemic of
Good in the sense of bad.
It illustrates
what can go wrong.
The Western blindness to the problem. Prime Minister Carney, newly elected Prime Minister, a good liberal, Oxford educated, successful business person, just recognized the Palestinian state with Australia.
As Dalia said, the non-existent Palestinian
Correct.
state.
Yeah.
And he recognized it with no preconditions. No preconditions. Not the hostages, not ending terrorism. I don't understand how Canada could recognize a Palestinian state run by Hamas committed to terrorism. It's a designated terror organization. Once you recognize that entity, then you have to sanction it for being a terror state. So there's no rational thought to it. But he is doing this because of political expediency. The people who represent Muslims in Canada, in the United Kingdom, in France for too long are people connected to radical Islam, to the Muslim Brotherhood and other jihadist entities. Canada has an Islamophobia ambassador who's connected to the Muslim Brotherhood. Literally, we show this in our report. We came out with a major report a few months ago on Canada. For too long, for political expediency and for money, the British government, the Canadian government has turned to the Muslim Brotherhood as being authentic representatives of the diverse Muslims in the United Kingdom and Canada. The vast majority, I believe, are good people, good citizens who want to get on with their lives. They want their children to have a good life and their grandchildren to prosper. But for money, for donations from before Saudi Arabia and now Qatar, the Canadian government...
And for votes now, domestically.
Yeah, they represent institutions that are funded by the Muslim Brotherhood, by the Qataris in Canada, in civil society, as authentic voices of Muslims in Canada, and now for votes, as you say, from Yosef Kawadawi, the spiritual head of the Muslim Brotherhood, from the Qataris. They funded community organizations, mosques. They bought off members of parliament from both the Liberal, Conservative, and NDP parties in Canada, and they've become the authentic representatives of the Muslims in Canada, and it's very dangerous. Mm-hmm. And this is starting a backlash we see in Europe, in Canada to some extent, by the United Kingdom and France and Italy. There's sort of a reactionary now social movement that's emerging on the radical right that's anti-Muslim, not just Islamophobic. They're anti-Muslim, they're anti-Semitic, and they're going to, they're starting to attack these representatives of the Muslim community because they've been so anti-Canadian, anti-British. They've been assigned by the government as the authentic voices. Now you have a backlash against Muslims. It's a very dangerous game.
And actually, I have an observation on this, why this type of radicalism has succeeded in Europe and Canada and did not succeed in the United States yet. You will be surprised. So it succeeded there because of the influence of Turkey and Qatar. Turkey actually created this type of mosques where they can create terrorists inside the mosques, and the government of these European countries and also in Canada know nothing about it. While Turkey was sponsoring, and Qatar of course were sponsoring these mosques and just poisoning the minds of the people there. Why it didn't happen here in the US despite that there were attempts just to do that? It's because of the black Muslims in the United States.
The African American
The
Muslims.
African American Muslims.
Explain.
Actually, it's amazing how this community is, and I met several of them. Look, when I first came to the United States after what happened with me in Egypt, I wanted to go to a mosque, and I went to some of them, and unfortunately they were filled with Arabs. And of course, it was all about hating Israel, and so to the extent that I didn't feel safe inside the mosque, inside the house of God, where I should be worshiping. So I boycotted mosques for a while, until by accident I was in Atlantic City, and I went to one of the mosques there where actually the imam was a black Muslim. And the people there told me, no, he's very tolerant. He even speaks against Hamas. He gets death threats because he spoke against Hamas. I couldn't believe it. Like I said, okay, I will go on Friday and see what he says. And to my surprise, after I made some research, met of course a few people from this community, I discovered something amazing in them. They put their American identity first. They don't fall for the rhetoric that Islam is, or your religious identity is above your national identity. They are so focused on their American issues, American identity, it's their priority. They don't care about what's happening elsewhere in the world, like, you know, the other groups, the Arabs and maybe Southeast Asians who are very influenced with the rhetoric of Al-Azhar and the Muslim Brotherhood coming out of Egypt and so. So I believe they are the only reason the black Americans, the black Muslims in the United States, the American black Muslims are the only reason why the United States was able to resist this wave that we saw in the past 2 years to radicalize the society here or the community here. So
it's a very interesting observation. I'm sure for many it's the first time they're hearing it. Thank you for that, Dalia. We have a few minutes left, and I want to still squeeze in at least one more question to you, Charles, and one more to you, Dalia. You said that ISGAP issued its report on Canada and in Canada. Share with us the reaction to the report and whether you're more or less optimistic after issuing the report about action being taken in Ottawa.
So it's a great question. So I'm going to start by sort of backing up a moment. I spent Passover in Montreal, where I'm originally from, and the second Seder, I was at my sister's house, and I've told you this story. My grandparents came to Canada as refugees, and they were friends with a group of people. Their children were friends with my parents, grew up in the sort of the second generation. I was friends with many of the grandchildren, and my nephews in Montreal, my sister's children, are friends with the great-grandchildren. And the second Seder, some of these people came to the dinner table, and I was listening to the conversation, and I did not recognize the city that I grew up in. That people are taking mezuzahs off their door, and these are not assimilated Jewish people who are afraid of their identity. These are proud Jewish people, proud of Israel, proud of their culture and their heritage, and they're taking mezuzahs off their door. They're being intimidated. There's violence on the streets, rocks being thrown through windows with mezuzahs on doors. Late at night, people driving up and down the streets in Jewish communities with loud Arabic music to intimidate people. And this is the conversation. So I was shocked. We took our report to, I won't mention the names of the institutions, but sort of Jewish organizations at the forefront of representing and defending the Jewish community. There's a sense of intimidation. They're afraid of being...
Among Jewish organizations
correct,
in Canada.
Yes, they're afraid of being labeled Islamophobic. They're afraid of losing their insurance. That's being threatened. I know of several institutions, Jewish organizations, that fund research and science at universities in Israel. They've been told by banks that they've been dealing with for many generations that they don't want their business anymore. It's too risky. So this is the environment. So we were...
It wasn't long ago that Canada was an oasis for Jews.
Absolutely.
One of the great communities in the world.
Absolutely. So conversations in Canada is about where do we go to get a second passport? Where do we go? There's fear. I mean,
You think it's too late?
Well, these conversations are all now happening in this country as well, in the United States. Is it too late? So look, our report, and it's on our website. You can access it at isgap.org for free. We have another report coming out on Canada soon. Our report shows how the Muslim Brotherhood has infiltrated the Muslim community, civic society, universities, and even the government, federal and the provincial levels. So it's alarming. It's late, but I believe that there's an awakening in Canada, and there's a good people of Canada will, I think, resist this. I hope there'll be a backlash to this, but it's very concerning. And our second report will be out soon. We show how the Brotherhood and violence has infiltrated our universities.
And it's also a cautionary tale for the United States.
Absolutely. I think there's a wave that happened in Europe. It came to Canada, and it's coming. It's here in the United States, and it's arrived.
That's it's an urgent telegram for every JBS viewer. Dalia, we have literally 2 minutes left. I want to come back to your meeting with President Trump, which we constructed here. Sum it up. What would you say to President Trump if he gave you just 2 minutes and said, tell me what you think I need to know as the President of the United States today, Dalia?
Sure.
Mr. President, what would you say?
So, number one, never trust Qatar and Turkey on handling the situation in the Middle East. It's good you forced them to take this step with you of twisting Hamas' arm to agree to the deal. Okay, fine. Now their role has ended, and they should not proceed with the next steps. You have to include the axis of good, the moderate ones, alongside Egypt, although Egypt, unfortunately, is now leaning on the wrong side, but it's still an important player, either we like it or not. So, and also its relationship with Israel is the most important thing, actually, for the stability in the region. So this is number one. Number two, what's happening right now in Gaza is not acceptable in any way. Actually, the U.S. Central Command is the only, the only one who condemned what's going on. Western leaders and Arab leaders, everyone is so silent about Hamas going around and killing people, including women and children, and no one is condemning this. While actually a few weeks ago we were seeing the protests happening everywhere
because there are no
Israel.
Israelis involved now.
This is nonsense, So this
and your third point.
It's a moral obligation on the U.S. to intervene to make this happen. And the third point is focusing on the bigger picture, expanding the Abraham Accords, focusing on the work of the Muslim Brotherhood here in the West, and try to stop them as much as possible. Of course, designation is the ultimate goal, to designate them as a terrorist organization, but there are steps that can be taken now to drive their resources of funding, to control their action, and stop them from destroying, from their goal to destroy the West.
Three very important messages. I'm sorry that our time is up.
I have two important messages. First of all, I want to thank Dalia for being here and being our new coordinator for our Washington Bureau.
Thank you, Charles, my
and
honor.
JBS viewers, David Harris's book, Antisemitism, from Oxford University Press. It's available on Amazon. I urge you to
Charles,
purchase
thank
it.
you. Dalia, thank you.
Thank you, David.
JBS viewers, I think now you understand once again why I chose to become involved with ISGAP, because I think the issues that ISGAP is tackling today, and you heard it from Dalia and from Charles in the last hour, are critically important to the future of the Jewish people, the United States, and liberal democracy, not to mention the Middle East and Israel. So if you don't know ISGAP yet, spend some time reading about ISGAP on the website, learning about the organization. We'll be back soon with another conversation on the ISGAP Hour. I'm David Harris for Dalia Ziada and Charles Small, thanking you for being with us. See you again very soon.